Welcome to the next part. In this part, we will be adding the stem in here, and we will be also coloring the pumpkin with the stem and adding extra surface details. All right, let's save our file. So just go File, Save As. And I'm actually going to name this file Save As Carve face. Okay, let's put this into its dedicated network box. So this match size is a part of this, and this will be second. So let's call this carve details. And let's create color for this, something like that. All right, so moving on, let's focus on the stem. For the stem, we can again take a look at some reference here. Stems could be different shapes. They could be also curved like that. We can have them a bit more stylized, but in general, it is basically a cross section of some kind of interesting star-like shape that is mapped onto a curve. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We are going to use the labs simple shapes nodes for this, which is also a new node. So let's press tab, type labs simple shapes. So I'm going to use double star, and the default settings actually work. The only thing I'm going to change is I'm going to turn off the closed. Now, to make this star shape mapped correctly onto a line, I'm just going to show you the basic idea, and then we're going to add modifications to it. So for example, we have a line that we want the cross section to be mapped onto. The line could be shorter, somewhere like 0.35, and we would also need some more resolution in the middle. So let's add 32 divisions. So you see we have more points, and basically we're going to use a simple sweep node for this. So if I put this here and the line into the first input, we would expect the sweep to work. Well, first of all, it's not even understanding that there is this custom shape from the second input. In the surface shape, we'll need to change this second input cross section, and then this will give us something unexpected. And this is mainly because this cross section needs to be aligned in the Z axis. So let's put down transform, and I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees, so it is aligned to the Z axis. And now if we take a look at the sweep, we can see that it worked. However, we need to make a couple of adjustments to this shape. First of all, if we take a look at it from this angle, it is a little bit too uniform, and I want to add some kind of distortion on the edges to make it more organic. So let's add a resample node. So the resample would add more or less evenly spaced points on top of this. So the basic settings work pretty well. If you want more points, you can reduce the length here. Then we can put down a fuse to basically weld all the vertices together. And then after the fuse, I want to create a vector that would be basically pointing from the center outwards. And you can do it with Vex, you can do it with Bobs. There are lots of ways to do it. The easiest way to do it is using polyframe. So if we put down the polyframe node, it will create vectors based on surface topology and attributes. So we can just say that I want to use the primitive centroid, and if I put the display flag onto the polyframe, we would have some vectors generated. So the first one is the normal. The normal would just be pointing forward. Let's turn it off. The next one is the tangent u. If you click on I and then click on visualize tangent u attribute, assuming that you have the attribute visualizers on in the viewport, it will show. So this is exactly what we need. So the tangent u. All right, so the tangent u attribute is going to define the direction where we want to distort everything. So it's just going to be outside. Let's put down a mountain. So the mountain, you can see if it would be using the normals, let's turn off the tangent u. The normals would, since they're pointing forward, right? The normals pointing forward, it would be distorting it like that. But I actually don't want it. I want it to be distorted outward. So instead of vector n, let's click on the drop down and use tangent u. So now we have something like that. Let's adjust the mountain settings a little bit. I'm going to set the amplitude to 0.16. And we are going to reduce the element size to something like 0.3. Okay, yeah, something like that. And then we can give it some offset, maybe 2.6. I'm just putting the numbers that I have. So the shape would be a little bit more organic. Feel free to play with this. Feel free to play with the different shapes in here to get a custom stem for yourself. Okay, so now the sweep node would look like this, and we would need to adjust some parameters on the sweep node to make it look more interesting. So first thing, in the sweep node, I want to make sure that the scale is not as big. So I'm going to reduce the cross-section scale to something like 0.215. So we got thinner mesh, and then overall we want to close the top and the bottom. So I'm going to change the end cap to grid, so it will be a little bit more smooth. It is a little bit too smooth, so I'm just going to reduce the roundness and this thing, so it's just like a flat. And by the way, if we want to see this a little bit better, you can probably there should be a normal, but let's see if we had a normal before. That's gonna fix it. No, I think we have to add it after. So let's add it after. So yeah, now we would see it much better. So that's our cross section. So in the sweep node, we can now adjust the actual shape of this. Let's turn on apply scale along curve, and let's set this ramp to be in a specific shape. So feel free to make this the way you like, but I'm just going to put the numbers that I have in here. And before I change anything, I'm going to change the curve to be a B-spline to make it much smoother. So let's click on this curve and then choose B-spline. All right, so I'm going to add a couple of these here. So I'm going to make the top thinner, and let's add another one and another one. So let's now set these to be in a specific position. So the first position is obviously going to be 0, but the value is going to be lower, so 0.75. All right, the second one we have at 0.1 and 0.55. Okay, something more like this. And then the third one, I have it pretty close to the first one. So it's going to be 0.13 and then 0.23. All right, and then this one would be somewhere around 0.5 and 0.1, and the last one is just going to be at 0 and at 1, sorry, 0.075. There we go. So this is at least what I have. I think this needs to be shifted to 55. Yeah, 55. Yeah, there we go. So this is what I have. Feel free to change this into a shape that you have. Sorry about this. I think I need to do one more correction to this. Instead of 0.01, it was 0.1. Yeah, so now it is more correct. All right, so that's our basic shape for the stem. Of course, we can add more things to this, like a twist. So if we go to the rotation in here, we can just twist it around. So I can set it to 180 degrees like that, and we can get some kind of interesting twist in there. Okay, so after this one, we can subdivide it. Subdivide like that, so it is a little bit smoother. And then after the subdivision, what I want to do is I want to put the stem on top of the pumpkin. So let's actually visualize it. If I hold Control Shift and click on the template, it will visualize the entire pumpkin. So imagine that the stem is gonna be coming out of this, but I want the edges of the stem to basically warp on top of this surface and kind of bend inward, just like the pumpkin. So it feels like it is basically comes from the same structure. So let's do something like this. Let's put a transform node. We are going to transform the stem up. So it is around 0.875. All right. So after this one, let's now take the actual pumpkin. So I'm going to continue with the Boolean one, and I'm going to create a mask from geometry node. So let's create mask from geometry. And obviously this one we want to be also using points. So the pumpkin will go into the second input, and the stem would go into the first input. Let's take a look here. So let's preview the mask. Let's select mask from geometry and then turn this toggle, and let's make sure it's visible in the viewport as well. So now the idea is that we want the actual stem, the end of the stem, to be mapped onto this surface. Okay, so let's make the mask a bit different. So first of all, I want smaller radius, something like 0.275. And then I also want to invert the mask, so I'm going to do it like that. And the values that I have here are basically going to be 0.91 from the right side, and then from the left side it's going to be somewhere around 0.35, and we can lift it up 0.1, just like that. So these values would make sense when we actually see what this mask is going to do, right? And then we can adjust them after. I'm just giving you the numbers right away. So if I put down the ray swap now, we will basically ray this entire thing down onto the pumpkin, and then we will blend based on this mask the rayed and non-rayed part. So the bottom would actually be mapped correctly, and then this part would just be in the air. Okay, so let's set the pumpkin to be the collision for the ray. Let's set the stem to the first input, and basically the ray would just do it in a very messy way, but I want to change the method. So from normal, we're going to use vector, right click in the direction, delete channels, and then I'm going to set the direction to -1. So it just kind of does this, and you can see that it basically mapped it from top to bottom. Now after this, we are going to use blend shapes. So I'm going to blend the rayed and non-rayed pumpkin. So let's plug the ray into the first, the non-rayed into the second, and then in the blend shapes, we can say in the blend masking from attribute, and now we should see it. So basically this is what we should have as the end result. Let's see here. So yeah, it looks like the bottom part is pretty, let me see again. So you can see that it is pretty close. The reason why there is this tiny little distance is because in the mask we didn't set the value to complete 0. So if I set it to even a lower one, you can see now it's going to be mapped much closer. So that's what this basically controls, right? So if you want, you can set it to a bit closer. But this is basically how we can now control the stem to sit right on top of the pumpkin. And if you don't want it to be lifted up that much, you can just use a smaller value, maybe 0.75. Depending on this number, it actually can change the look of the stem. So you can see what 0.75 does, what 0.875 does. It kind of basically, because of the mask, we are now stretching this. Let's preview the mask. So we're basically stretching the bottom when we're lifting it up a little bit higher. And also if we put 0.75, you can see that the mask position changes a little bit, right? So again, play with the values, see what you like, see what works better for your stem. But this is how we basically can achieve something like this. So also you can play with the twist. If you don't like this to be twisted this much, you can adjust this to be maybe 135 degrees, so it's not twisted as much. After this one, we would add some extra details to the stem, because this still looks a little bit too parametric. And we can do it simply by using noise along UVs. And again, the great part about the sweep workflow is that it will give us the UVs for free. If you turn on show texture UVs, it should have created UVs, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, we actually have to turn it on here. So let's turn on compute UVs, and there we go. So it will give us these nice UVs, and basically we can now use them to generate the extra noise details. So it will create the UVs on the vertex level, because usually this is where the UVs are being created. For the noise, we would need to make sure that the UVs are on the points, okay, because the noise will be applied to the points. So we will use attribute promote. So press tab, attribute promote, and in this attribute promote, we can just say that I want from vertex to point. And the attribute that I want to promote, if you click on the drop down, is the actual texture. And then we can add a mountain node. So let's press tab, add the mountain. And with the mountain node, again, it will completely destroy the shape. But if we will change the mapping from position to UV, And then if we adjust the amplitude here, so I'm going to use a very low number, something like 0.0025, and then we can also add make sure that the element size is smaller, 0.01. Okay, and then we can also go to the element scale, click on XYZ, and scale the y-axis 10 times, so it is going to be stretched like this. It's a bit hard to see with the UVs on, so I'm going to turn them off so you can see what we got here. So the shape is a little bit, it has some intersecting polygons, so we can fix this quite easily when we convert this to VDB, so I'm not really worried about it just yet. For extra details, actually, what we could do before we add the mountain, we can do subdivide node. Let's add some subdivide here. And you can see with the depth of 2, for example, we get some extra divisions here. And we also get some extra noise. Finally, let's add some bend to our stem because it looks just a bit awkward being this straight. So let's press tab, bend, and let's plug this mountain to the first input. All right, so the bend would need to be adjusted. So we need to change the capture direction. Right now it's set to Z, but we need to set it to Y so it captures up. And then let's change this back to 0. Capture origin, we would need to offset up. And if you want to see the bend controls, you can select the node and then click on the show handle or press enter in the viewport. And basically now if we start increasing the origin to somewhere around 0.85, we would see that now the capture should be better. Because I don't want to bend the base, I just want to bend the top a little bit. And then in the actual angle, we can set it to somewhere around 350. And there we go. So now we have some bend. And additionally, this also has an option for twisting. If you want an additional twisting, you can twist it even more from here. But I'm not going to do that. All right, so we have this. Now, for the next part, we will take a look at how we can add more details to the pumpkin based on the UV noise, and then we will actually use that pumpkin for the ray and masking, and we will also add some color and prepare the pumpkin for last steps.